Disappearance of Savannah Guthrie's mother has captured national attention, raising urgent questions about law enforcement coordination, forensic evidence, and the role of federal agencies in high-profile cases. As new clues emerge, a police expert has stepped forward to analyze the investigation, offering insight into what may be happening behind the scenes. At the center of this unfolding mystery is Nancy, a woman described as vulnerable and possibly in need of medication, whose sudden disappearance has mobilized multiple agencies and intensified public scrutiny. The investigation initially began with the Pima County Sheriff's Department, the local authority responsible for the area where Nancy was reported missing. Shortly afterward, the Federal Bureau of Investigation became involved. This naturally sparked confusion about leadership. When both local and federal authorities work the same case, the question becomes, who is in charge? Officials have emphasized that there is no single lead agency, but experts point out that in practice, having one clear decision maker is often critical. From all appearances, the Sheriff's Department has been running operations on the ground, while the FBI provides technical and analytical support, a process often referred to in law enforcement terms as enhancement. However, cooperation between agencies is not always seamless. Tensions can arise, especially when it comes to collecting and analyzing evidence. Even elite training centers like FBI Academy at Quantico are not immune to institutional pride or procedural disagreements. While such friction can be normal, experts hope any sharp elbows are set aside in the shared goal of locating Nancy and resolving the case. One of the most talked about pieces of evidence is a single glove reportedly found inside the house. This glove has taken on outsized importance because of its unusual characteristics. If it is indeed a leather glove sized for a man and not part of a matching pair typically found in a home, that detail alone raises red flags. The home sits in a desert region where heavy leather gloves are not commonly worn indoors. Logic suggests that a lone glove, especially one inconsistent with household items, could be directly connected to a crime. If investigators believe the glove is significant, best practices would suggest sending it immediately to the FBI's laboratory facilities in Quantico. There, it could be rapidly processed and cross-checked against national DNA databases. Instead, the sheriff reportedly sent certain evidence, including DNA samples, to a lab in Florida, a facility they regularly use and trust. While that lab is described as professional and capable of high-level DNA testing, some experts believe that, in hindsight, routing critical evidence directly to the FBI might have accelerated results. At the time, however, local authorities may not have anticipated the scale or complexity the case would reach. Complicating matters further, additional gloves were found outside during search operations in the desert. These items present a different challenge. The region includes transient populations, homeless encampments, landscapers, and frequent foot traffic. Gloves left outdoors could have been there for months or even years. Environmental exposure can degrade DNA, and there is also the possibility that search personnel themselves accidentally dropped items. In such cases, investigators must carefully determine whether any biological evidence on the gloves is relevant. Ideally, DNA on the inside of a glove would point to the wearer, while DNA on the outside could potentially link to a victim. Still, the glove discovered inside the house remains the most compelling. If its size and material suggest it belonged to a man and does not match any known resident, it could represent a direct link to a suspect. The absence of an immediate one-to-one DNA match does not necessarily mean investigators are empty-handed. Advanced DNA analysis can reveal traits such as ethnicity or eye color, even when no database match exists. The fact that authorities have not publicly released such descriptive details may indicate that the DNA sample was partial, degraded, or insufficient for predictive profiling. Investigators have also released a height estimate of a potential suspect, between 5'9" and 5'10". This information reportedly came from detailed forensic analysis involving Doorbell, doorbell camera footage, and possibly bloodstain pattern measurements. To obtain accurate height data, specialists may use laser-assisted photographic techniques while shielding glare from the desert sun. A tent erected at the scene likely served to block harsh light, allowing precise measurement. While a 1-inch margin may seem small, it can significantly narrow a suspect pool. Anyone substantially shorter or taller can quickly be ruled out. Surveillance footage has revealed additional clues, including the type of backpack worn by the suspect. Authorities identified it as a brand sold exclusively at Walmart. This detail could be pivotal. If the backpack was recently purchased with a credit card, transaction records could provide a list of buyers. Though reviewing such records is labor-intensive, it is standard police work. If the purchase was made with cash, investigators would need to rely on store surveillance footage. Retention policies vary by location, as digital systems overwrite old data after a set period, sometimes as short as 60 days, sometimes as long as 120 days. Investigators will likely cross-reference backpack purchases with physical descriptors, such as height, clothing, and possibly footwear. The synchronization of these data points, height estimates, purchase records, DNA findings, and video imagery can gradually narrow the suspect pool. Even small details like sweatshirt brands or distinctive shoes can become vital threads in the investigative web. The FBI's involvement has prompted speculation whether the high profile of Savannah Guthrie influenced federal participation. Experts note that the FBI often assists in kidnapping or endangered person cases, especially when technical resources exceed local capacity. The Sheriff's Department reportedly has about 500 sworn officers, with more than half assigned to corrections. That leaves a comparatively small team for field investigations. The FBI brings advanced forensic tools, data analytics, and international reach. In addition to the Sheriff's Office and the FBI, other agencies are participating. Customs and Border Protection units familiar with desert tracking have deployed personnel and canine teams. Portions of the surrounding land fall within Native American reservation territory, and tribal authorities with deep knowledge of the terrain are also assisting. Contractors specializing in technical forensics and digital analysis are involved as well. While this multi-agency approach increases resources, it can create coordination challenges. Experts emphasize that clearly defined leadership helps avoid confusion and duplication of effort. Public perception of the investigation has been mixed. Some observers believe early stages appeared disorganized. However, experts argue that by the 2-week mark, most interagency conflicts are typically resolved, and operational rhythm stabilizes. Law enforcement agencies are accustomed to collaborating under pressure, and relationships between local chiefs and FBI representatives are often cultivated long before crises arise. The FBI has now doubled the reward for information to $100,000. Increasing the reward serves a strategic purpose. Financial incentives can motivate individuals who may be withholding information to come forward. In cases involving more than one perpetrator, secrecy becomes harder to maintain. As investigators often say, one person can keep a secret, two rarely can. The hope is that someone with knowledge, whether directly involved or tangentially aware, will decide the reward outweighs the risk of silence. A painful but necessary question looms. At what point does a rescue mission become a recovery mission? Experts caution against making that distinction prematurely. Investigations proceed similarly in either scenario. Authorities must operate under the assumption that Nancy is alive, particularly if there is a possibility of ransom. In such cases, victims are often more valuable alive than deceased, providing leverage for negotiation. Even with medical concerns, law enforcement must maintain hope as both a strategic and humanitarian principle. When asked directly whether Nancy is likely still alive, the expert emphasized the importance of optimism. Publicly speculating otherwise could deepen the anguish of the family without changing investigative procedures. For Savannah Guthrie and her loved ones, maintaining hope is not only emotional, but essential. As the case unfolds, it underscores the complexities of modern investigations, interagency dynamics, forensic science limitations, digital surveillance analysis, and public communication strategy. Each clue, from a single glove to a Walmart backpack, represents a potential turning turning point. Each decision, from lab selection to reward increases, carries consequences. Ultimately, the search for Nancy is more than a headline. It's a race against time, guided by evidence, technology, and human determination. Law enforcement agencies at every level are now intertwined in the effort, striving to transform fragments of data into answers. Whether through DNA breakthroughs, surveillance leads, or a tip motivated by reward money, investigators remain focused on one objective: bringing Nancy home and delivering clarity to a family and a nation waiting anxiously for resolution.
For full video, click related link below or like and subscribe this channel.